Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of D&D CR Exposed. On today's episode we are looking at the living portent from the Book of Many Things. This was another Google form submission and hopefully whoever submitted this is actually going to see this oh so many years ago. Probably like a year or two ago when it was submitted. I'll have to double check the timestamp. But in any event, before we get into looking at this monster, let's talk about the business real quick, and that is the tool here. If you'd like to get this tool for yourself, then take a look at the link in my description for the coffee page that I have set up, where you can get this tool completely for free or donate if you feel so inclined to, which is greatly appreciated. Other than that, I also have a bunch of custom classes, subclasses, monsters, and a bunch of other stuff at my coffee page that you can support the channel with. If you'd also like to support monthly, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member or a coffee supporter for as little as $1 a month. Beyond that, you can also support the channel by liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting. All greatly appreciated. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into looking at the living portent. So our monster here is going to be a CR3. It's got an AC of 15. It is a small or medium celestial, but because it's running with D8s here, we're going to go ahead and leave it at medium. And then move on to adding in the hit dice, which is going to be 10. From there, we go ahead and modify our monster with its stats of 14 strength, 16 dex, 14 con, 14 intelligence, 16 wisdom, and 15 charisma. After that, we would look at the skills area here, but we only have immunity to radiant damage and exhaustion, so we're not going to worry about that since there's only the one trigger here. Not enough, we need 3 at least to bring that in place. We'll move down into the trait area, which is just brilliance. In true form only, the living portent sheds bright light, so that doesn't matter. We will go ahead and move on to the actions here. And the actions are that the living portent makes 2 radiant strike attacks. So let's take a look at the the radiant strikes here, which have a +5 to attack, which means we are getting them from dex. And we'll go ahead and update the attack to 5. And then we are looking at just a simple 9 points of damage. Technically 9.5 because we have an odd number of dice. If you're wondering why it's half a damage, if you were to do the averages of the die of adding up 1 to 12 and then dividing by 12, you'll see that we end up with 6.5, and then we add in the modifier of 3 to give us 9.5. Now that is important because when we have a multi-attack here and we can do 2 radiant strikes, that extra half die does actually get added in, and this becomes a 19 total damage instead of 18, which sometimes does actually make a difference. And because our multi-attack is just that, we're going to go ahead and add in the 2 there to get us the 19 points of damage. Next we have Prophetic Blessing. The living portent magically infuses the power of its prophecies into another willing creature. The target's hit point max increases its current hit points, and it gains a prophecy die, which is kind of cool. But this is not really doing much for our monster's DPS, so we're going to actually skip this. In terms of Tales of the Valiant monsters, they've kind of given me the message here when I talked to them about calculating defensive spells, that if you do anything defensively, then you would negate anything offensive, and it kind of balances things out, which is kind of what I do here to begin with, but I am kind of skipping anything defensive now, just to save myself some time and see what it looks like offensively. Now again, because our spellcasting only has basically defensive stuff, Divination, Greater Restoration, and Cure Wounds, I'm not going to bother adding in that as well because that will reduce our offensive capabilities. Now, if our monster doesn't hit a CR3 because of all this, then I will have to look at the defensive capabilities to see how that works out. But then it's only being applied to the creature and not to anyone else. So for instance, we give ourselves potentially... so we couldn't do the Prophetic Blessing to ourselves, but we could do 2 Cure Wounds if need be, and a Greater Restoration. Alright, next we are looking at bonus action of just change shape. That's not going to do anything for us, so we'll skip that. Then we look at reactions, Price of Defiance. When the living portent is damaged by a creature that it can see, Radiant Power sears the creature. So this is like the Warlock Retribution spell there. or rebuke. I'm forgetting it at the moment. But in any event, we have a DC 13 con save, and then the creature takes 10.5 damage. So we'll go ahead and add that in as well, because more than likely we are going to be using that every round of combat. So 10.5 there. All right, so moving into the factoring in all of our attacks here, we're going to go ahead and throw in the price of defiance here, and that will be 10.5 every round of combat. Actually, I can just do this, excuse me, plus our multi-attack, since we're doing that as well every round of combat. And sure enough, surprisingly actually, or maybe not so much, I'm not really sure where the Book of Many Things was created by, or who it was created by, we actually do have a CR3 monster. So we're looking at a CR4 plus a offensive CR of 4, a defensive CR of 1, which brings us to 5, which when divided out gives us 2.5, and technically we round up because it's not damage or healing, and we apply normal math rules here, and our monster is in essence a 3. If we wanted to meet a true 3, I would then probably increase the damage a little bit. If we increase the defenses, we just prolong battles, and D&D likes to have quicker battles. So in theory, I would probably increase this a little more here. The quickest thing would be to throw these into the dice here and then calculate it that way. But I'm just going to throw in some rough numbers here and say, let's try. We want to get this up to a 5, which means we need an extra, what was that? We're at 29, so we need an extra 4 points of damage. So we need to go from a 9 to a 13, and there we go. So we need to factor out our damage here somewhere to about 13 or 14 points of damage to give us up to 37 or so, somewhere in this range. And then we have a proper CR3. We don't have to worry about the averages. But beyond that, just from what we have offensively speaking, our monster is a proper CR3 monster. Great. Perfect. There we go. So with that out of the way, whoever requested this, I hope you enjoyed this quick video here, and I'll see you all in the next one.